2 hours and 14 minutes. That's how long he stood there yelling at me in the conference room. I tracked every single minute on that useless chrome wall clock behind his head while 32 people watched. My colleagues, my team, even the intern who started on Monday. All of them just staring. Not one person spoke when he smacked his hand on the table so hard my water glass toppled. Nobody moved when he labeled me fundamentally incompetent and the biggest mistake in the company's history. The quarterly numbers were down 6.2% in my division. And apparently that meant I deserved a public execution. When he finally stopped, my silk blouse was damp with sweat beneath my blazer. The silence felt like concrete solidifying around me. And then I heard my own voice, steady as a surgeon's hand. "Anything else, sir?" He actually looked taken aback, like he expected me to cry or quit or both. "No," he finally muttered. "Just fix it." I nodded, collected my documents, and walked out without hurrying. 32 pairs of eyes scorched into my back. I didn't brake until I reached my car in the underground parking garage. Then I screamed into my steering wheel until my throat felt like sandpaper. That was Tuesday, May 17th, the day I decided Damon Caldwell needed to lose everything. Sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Melina Vega, 34, Senior Director of Market Analytics at a Fortune 500 financial services firm, or I was until 3 months ago. People who know me professionally would describe me as meticulous, composed, the woman who triple checks her work and arrives at meetings with contingency plans for her contingency plans. My mother calls me intensely practical, which in Cuban mom language means boring. But here's something about practical people. We understand how systems function. We see the gears shifting. We grasp cause and effect. Before I dive deeper into this, if you're genuinely interested in knowing what happened next, could you please like this video? Also, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get alerts when we upload new stories like these. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because honestly, what I'm about to share might be the most valuable lesson some of you ever learn about workplace justice. Let me tell you about Damon Caldwell, 46, Executive Vice President, Harvard MBA. The kind of man who owns a yacht but doesn't actually enjoy sailing. He just likes throwing parties where everyone has to take their shoes off before stepping aboard. He'd been with the company for 17 years and had the CEO's absolute trust. 5 years ago, he personally recommended me for promotion to senior director, telling me I had potential beyond my experience. For 4 years, I excelled. My team consistently beat projections. I earned internal awards. Clients requested me specifically for their presentations. But something shifted last year. Damon stopped recognizing my achievements, started nitpicking trivial issues, leaving me out of meetings I should have been in. I attempted to talk to him directly, professional, respectful conversations about my concerns. He'd nod, promise to look into it. Then nothing changed. I began documenting everything. Every email, every meeting, every report, just in case. Then came the Morton account, a huge potential client worth millions in annual revenue. Damon assigned it to my team, but with ridiculous deadlines. When I pointed this out, he smiled and said, "I thought you were exceptional, Melina. Prove me right." My team worked nonstop for 2 weeks. I barely saw my apartment except to shower and switch clothes. We produced a flawless presentation package addressing every concern the client had raised in early discussions. The morning of the presentation, Damon called me into his office. "There's been a shift in plans," he said, not lifting his eyes from his computer. "Lyle's team will take the Morton presentation." Lyle Donovan, the golden boy who'd been at the company less than a year, the one who played golf with Damon on weekends. "My team has been working on this for 2 weeks," I said, keeping my voice controlled. "We addressed all their concerns, built the models, and Lyle's team will use that exceptional groundwork," Damon interrupted. This isn't personal, Melina. Morton specifically requested a fresh perspective. I knew it was a lie. Never meeting as a group, never communicating through company email or phone, using encrypted messaging apps and gathering only in places without security cameras. Phase 2, we needed additional evidence, the kind that couldn't be brushed aside. Sonia helped me understand precisely which legal boundaries Damon had crossed. Thomas showed me how. I'd spoken with Juliet Morton myself 3 days earlier to verify a few details. She was expecting me. I'd like to at least be present for the presentation, I said. Damon finally glanced up at me, his expression almost sympathetic. That won't be necessary. Focus on your quarterly numbers. They're starting to look troubling. I left his office feeling nauseated because I recognized exactly what was unfolding. I'd seen it before with Anaya from legal, with Tomas from product development, Damon elevating people, then methodically tearing them down once they became too successful, too noticeable, too much of a threat. Later that day, I heard that Lyle's presentation had gone exceptionally well. Morton signed with us. Damon sent a company-wide email applauding Lyle's innovative strategy and outstanding client handling. My team's name wasn't mentioned once. 2 weeks later came that Tuesday, the public humiliation. 2 hours and 14 minutes of deliberate destruction. What Damon didn't realize was that I'd been preparing, not for that exact moment, but for something just like it, because practical people recognize patterns. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I brewed a pot of coffee and opened my laptop. I had 3 folders of evidence already collected. First, documentation of every instance where Damon had taken credit for the work of women and minorities over the past 5 years. Emails, meeting recordings with clear consent, presentation files with metadata showing the actual creators. Second, proof that Damon had manipulated data on 3 major accounts to inflate his personal performance while making other divisions, including mine, appear weaker. Third, and most incriminating, evidence that Damon had been subtly directing certain clients toward his brother-in-law's consulting firm, creating a major conflict of interest that violated company policy and possibly federal law. But it still wasn't enough. Damon was too shielded, too valuable to the company. They might reprimand him, maybe even demote him, but they wouldn't remove him. And he would absolutely destroy me in the process. I needed leverage that would make it impossible for the company to choose him over accountability. So, I crafted a new plan, a 3-phase strategy that would take months to put into motion. It would demand patience, flawless timing, and the willingness to risk everything. But when you've already lost your dignity in front of 32 coworkers, the cost-benefit calculation shifts. Phase 1. I needed allies. Carefully chosen, strategically placed people who had also suffered under Damon, yet still held credibility in the company. I began with Amani Rodas, a brilliant analyst who'd been passed over for promotion twice, despite having the strongest performance metrics in her division. Damon once jokingly asked her in a meeting if her natural hair was a political statement. I invited her for coffee at a shop 10 blocks from the office. "I'm not here to complain about Damon," I told her after some small talk. "I'm here because I'm doing something about him, and I think you may want to be part of it." She studied me for a long moment. "What exactly are you planning?" "Justice," I said. "But I need to know you're in before I share specifics." Amani sipped her coffee. "The Morton account wasn't the first time he's done this to you, was it?" "No. And you weren't the only one he's made comments about." She nodded slowly. "I'm listening." Next was Thomas Chen from Finance, who'd compiled a report showing discrepancies in expense allocations, a report Damon had buried. Then Sonia Martinez from Legal, who'd been silenced when she questioned some of Damon's client dealings. One by one, I assembled a small coalition to trace the money through the maze of company accounts. Amani taught me how to build data models that would expose the patterns in Damon's manipulations. For 3 weeks, I arrived at work at 6 o'clock in the morning and didn't leave until 8 at night. I performed my actual job flawlessly. There was no way I was giving Damon even the slightest excuse to target me. But every spare moment I had was spent strengthening our case. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Damon's executive assistant, Zara, sent me a meeting invite with only the location, the garage stairwell B level. When I got there, she was already waiting, looking anxious. "I don't have long," she said without any small talk. "But you should know, Mr. Caldwell has been meeting with the CEO about restructuring your division. They're discussing eliminating your position entirely." My stomach twisted. "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes sharpened. 3 years ago, before I worked for Mr. Caldwell, I filed a sexual harassment complaint against him. It conveniently disappeared from HR records. When I followed up, I was warned that continuing to spread rumors could jeopardize my job. I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "I'm not looking for sympathy," Zara replied. "I'm looking for accountability. I have access to Mr. Caldwell's calendar, emails, and files. I've been quietly documenting things that seemed questionable. I don't know if it helps, but..." She handed me a small USB drive. "This is very helpful," I said softly, "and very brave." She shook her head. "It's survival. I hear things. I know he's planning to replace me with someone younger." More visually appealing was the phrase he used with the CEO. That night, I went through the files Zara provided. They contained exactly what we needed: evidence of Damon deliberately rigging financial reports to make certain divisions, including mine, appear weaker while inflating his own numbers. There were emails proving he'd redirected potential clients to his brother-in-law's firm in exchange for kickbacks. And most disturbing, a pattern of targeting employees, especially women and minorities, whom he considered threats. I felt both validated and horrified. This man had systematically wrecked careers while the company turned a blind eye. We now had enough evidence not only to remove Damon, but to potentially spark federal investigations into financial misconduct. But releasing it all would create a scandal that could harm hundreds of innocent employees. The company's stock would crash, people would lose jobs, retirement accounts would tank. I needed a precise strike, not a nuclear blast. That's when I developed Phase 3, the most dangerous stage of the plan. I would have to persuade the board of directors that quietly removing Damon was in their best interest. I would need airtight evidence delivered in a way that left them no room to choose anything else. And I had to make sure Damon couldn't destroy me in retaliation. The annual board retreat was scheduled for the following month at a luxury resort in Arizona. Every senior executive would be there, including the CEO and Damon. I wasn't invited. My rank wasn't high enough. But Sonia from legal would be attending to present on regulatory compliance. We spent the next 3 weeks crafting a presentation unlike anything the company had ever seen. We assembled the evidence into clear, undeniable exhibits: financial data, email chains, witness accounts, everything carefully documented and validated. We built a secure website where it could all be accessed with a password and prepared to display it on screen. Sonia would have exactly 7 minutes to speak on her designated topic before the lunch break. We rehearsed how she would seamlessly shift from regulatory compliance to specific compliance issues involving one executive, only naming Damon once the evidence appeared on screen. The night before the retreat, I couldn't sleep. We had a single chance. If it failed, we'd almost certainly lose our jobs, maybe even get blacklisted across the industry. Damon had influential allies. At 4:37 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Sonia, her voice tight with fear. "They changed the schedule. I'm not presenting until tomorrow, and my time has been cut to 3 minutes." My mind raced. Could be coincidence. "There's more," Sonia added. "Damon cornered me at the welcome reception, said he was looking forward to discussing my future with the company. He knows something's going on." "Melina." I closed my eyes, trying to think. "Where's the CEO right now?" "Still at the reception." I think most people are heading to dinner soon. Is your presentation loaded and ready on your laptop? Yes, but find Thomas. Tell him to create a distraction at dinner. Something disruptive enough to empty the room, but not serious enough to end the event. Then get the CEO alone. Tell him you have urgent information he needs to review before tomorrow's sessions. Melina, I can't just. You can. We've come too far to retreat now. Call me afterward. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. I paced my apartment, glancing at my phone every few minutes. Finally, at 8:23 in the evening, Sonia called back. It worked, she said, her voice a blend of shock and triumph. Thomas dumped an entire tray of drinks on the governor's wife. While everyone rushed to help clean up, I got 5 minutes with the CEO, told him I had alarming information about financial misconduct that couldn't wait until tomorrow. And he watched the first 2 minutes of the presentation and stopped me. Said we needed to take this to his suite immediately. Melina. He convened an emergency closed session with 3 board members. They viewed the entire thing. My heart thudded in my chest. What did they say? The CEO asked me to remain in Arizona an extra day. Said they'd have to address this matter right away. Then he thanked me for my bravery in speaking up. I sank onto my couch. And Damon? No clue. He wasn't present. But the CEO's assistant was already making calls as I left. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls from Sonia and a text that read, "Check your email now." I scrambled for my laptop, pulse racing. A message had just arrived from the CEO's executive office requesting that I join an urgent video conference at 9 o'clock sharp. The time was 8:43. I didn't even shower, just threw on a blouse, dragged a brush through my hair, and logged in from my dining table. When the call connected, I wasn't prepared for the sight. The CEO, Gerald Manning, sat at the center of a conference table with 4 board members and the company's general counsel. "Miss Vega," Gerald said, his expression unreadable. "I appreciate you joining us on short notice." I nodded, trying to appear composed while my insides liquefied. "We've reviewed some deeply troubling information regarding Damon Caldwell's conduct and business activities," Gerald continued. "Information that appears to have been collected by you and several colleagues over an extended period. Is that accurate?" I took a steady breath. No turning back now. "Yes, sir." After observing a pattern of inappropriate behavior and noticing potential financial misconduct, I felt obligated to document these concerns. One of the board members leaned forward. "Why didn't you report these issues through standard channels? HR, ethics hotline." I looked directly into the camera. "With respect, sir, I did twice. Both reports were dismissed without investigation. Additionally, Mr. Caldwell's former assistant filed a sexual harassment complaint that inexplicably vanished from HR records." The room fell silent. Gerald traded glances with the general counsel. "Miss Vega," Gerald finally said, "we're initiating an immediate investigation into all these allegations. Mr. Caldwell has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. We'd like you to come to headquarters today to provide a full statement." "Of course," I said, still bracing for the hidden blow. "And Miss Vega," Gerald added, "while we don't endorse the manner in which this information was gathered and delivered, we do recognize the courage it took to bring it forward. Please know there will be no retaliation against you or your colleagues." I nearly laughed. No retaliation, after years of watching this company shield Damon while he wrecked careers. But I kept my expression composed. "Thank you, sir. I'll be there at whatever time you need." After the call ended, I sat at my dining table for a long while, trying to absorb what had just unfolded. They were investigating Damon. He was officially on leave. It felt like a win, yet something felt off. Too simple. They were containing the fallout, yes, but would it lead to actual consequences? Or would they simply hand Damon a golden parachute? Let him resign gracefully, maybe even help him secure a similar role at another company where he could repeat the same behavior. That wasn't justice. That was damage control. My phone rang. Imani. "They just called me in for a statement," she said without any introduction. Same video call with the CEO and the board. Damon's on leave. She went quiet for a moment. You don't sound relieved because we both know how this usually plays out. Confidential payouts? Non-disclosure agreements? He walks away wealthy while they bury everything. So, what's the alternative? Imani asked. I shut my eyes. Phase 3. B. Melina, no. We agreed that was the absolute last resort. It's too dangerous. Meet me at my place in an hour. Bring Thomas if you can. I'll call Sonia. Phase 3. B was the nuclear option. The plan we built but prayed we'd never activate. It would guarantee Damon faced genuine consequences, but it could also turn everything against us. By noon, my living room had turned into command central. Imani, Thomas, Sonia, and 2 others from our group were scattered across my furniture, laptops open. The company investigation will take weeks, I explained. During that time, they'll be working on damage control, drafting statements, probably negotiating Damon's exit deal. They'll want this to vanish as quietly as possible. But the evidence is strong, Thomas insisted. They can't just ignore financial misconduct. They can downplay it, Sonia pushed back. Chalk it up to accounting mistakes or misunderstandings. I've seen it happen. I nodded. Exactly. Which is why we need to make sure the investigation's findings become public no matter what. You're talking about leaking confidential corporate information, Thomas said softly. That could be career suicide. Maybe worse. Not if we execute it properly, I answered. We build a secure digital dead man switch. If Damon isn't fired for cause, if there's no public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, if they attempt to silence any of us with NDAs, the information automatically gets sent to financial regulators, major industry outlets, and 3 specific business journalists who've exposed corporate misconduct before. The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed the weight of it. We'd be risking everything, Imani finally said. We're already risking everything, I countered. At least this way we guarantee real consequences. Slowly, one after another, they agreed. We spent the next 4 hours assembling the system, ensuring it couldn't be traced back to any of us. The trigger would be simple. If Damon received any severance beyond what he was legally owed, or if he was permitted to resign instead of being terminated, or if the company refused to publicly acknowledge the misconduct, everything would release automatically. Then we went to headquarters and gave our statements separately, each of us spending hours with investigators, HR representatives, and legal counsel. I handed over all the evidence we had collected, minus the dead man switch details. For the next 2 weeks we waited, carried on with our jobs, pretended everything was normal, while the investigation unfolded. Damon remained on leave, his office dark, his parking spot empty. Then a company-wide email arrived from Gerald. After a thorough investigation, we have determined that Damon Caldwell engaged in behavior inconsistent with our values and policies. Mr. Caldwell is no longer with the company. Effective immediately. We are committed to fostering a workplace where all employees are treated with respect. The email continued with corporate language about values and procedures, but the message was unmistakable. Damon was gone. Yet there was no mention of financial misconduct, no acknowledgement of the careers he had derailed, no apology to those he had harassed or discriminated against. That afternoon, I was summoned to Gerald's office. He sat alone behind his enormous desk, looking fatigued. "Miss Vega," he said, motioning to a chair. "Please sit." I remained standing. I prefer to stand. "Thank you." He nodded, studying me. "I wanted to personally inform you that Mr. Caldwell has been terminated without severance. The investigation confirmed many of the issues you raised." "Many, but not all?" I asked. Gerald's expression tightened. "We found sufficient cause for termination. That's what matters." "With respect, sir, that's not all that matters. What about the people whose careers he ruined? The financial misconduct, the harassment? Those matters are being addressed internally, Gerald said firmly. As for careers harmed, including yours, I've personally reviewed recent performance evaluations and compensation decisions. Appropriate adjustments will be made. And the public accounting? Will the company acknowledge what actually happened? Gerald leaned forward. Miss Vega, you've achieved what you set out to do. Damon is gone. But dragging the company's reputation through the mud doesn't help anyone. It hurts shareholders, employees, clients. Is that your goal? I met his gaze steadily. What I want is accountability. Not just for Damon, but for the system that shielded him for years while he harmed people. The system, Gerald repeated, his voice cooling. The same system that just terminated a senior executive largely based on evidence you collected. The system that isn't taking action against you for how you gathered that evidence. The system that ignored formal complaints allowing HR records to vanish. That looked the other way for 17 years, while Damon created a hostile work environment for anyone he viewed as a threat, particularly women and minorities. Gerald was silent for a long moment. What exactly are you asking for, Miss Vega? A public statement acknowledging the full scope of the misconduct, a formal apology to everyone affected, and a third-party audit of all promotion decisions, performance evaluations, and compensation adjustments made under Damon's influence over the past 5 years. That's completely unreasonable, Gerald said, color rising in his face. The legal and financial implications alone would be significant, I interrupted, but not nearly as significant as what would occur if the full evidence became public. If regulators initiated investigations into the financial improprieties, if class action attorneys got involved, his eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's reality, I said calmly. I'm not the only one with copies of the evidence, sir. 3 days later, the company released a public statement far more detailed than anything I had expected. It acknowledged systemic discrimination, harassment, and financial misconduct by a former executive. It announced the third-party audit I had requested. It even included an apology to those whose careers and well-being had been negatively impacted. The statement didn't name Damon, but industry insiders knew exactly who it referenced. His reputation was destroyed overnight. No golden parachute, no quiet transition to another company, no cover-up for his actions. 2 days after the statement, I received a call from a journalist at a major business publication asking for comment on the situation at our company. I declined, of course, but the story ran anyway, with anonymous sources detailing Damon's behavior. Then another publication ran a piece, then another. Within a week, Damon Caldwell had become the poster child for toxic leadership and corporate accountability failures. His name turned radioactive in the industry. No company would touch him. A month later, I was promoted to executive director with a substantial raise. Gerald personally delivered the news, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. We both knew it wasn't just recognition of my skills. It was insurance against potential lawsuits, but I accepted it anyway. Amani received her long overdue promotion as well. Thomas was appointed to lead a new financial oversight committee. Sonia became head of a newly created ethics compliance team. Even Zara, Damon's former assistant, was offered a position with better pay and a clear advancement path. Justice, it seemed, had been served. Yet the victory felt hollow somehow, because the system itself hadn't changed. We had forced its hand, and the moment we eased up, it would revert to protecting people like Damon again. That's when I made my final decision. I accepted the promotion, the raise, the corner office. I smiled in meetings with Gerald and the board. I played the good soldier for exactly 6 months. Then I resigned. My resignation letter was simple. I was leaving to start a consulting firm specializing in workplace culture and corporate accountability. What I didn't mention was that Amani, Thomas, Sonia, and several others were joining me as partners, or that our first clients included 3 former employees who had been forced out by Damon years earlier and were now C-suite executives at other companies. The day I cleared out my office, Gerald came by. He leaned against my doorframe, watching me pack. "You know," he said casually, "I've been in business for 34 years, seen all kinds of people come and go, but I've never met anyone quite like you, Melina." I kept packing, not looking up. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is," he said, surprising me. "You could have just taken Damon down. Instead, you changed an entire company, forced us to confront issues we'd ignored for years." Now I looked up. "And yet, when I leave today, you'll still be running that company essentially the same way." Gerald smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you've left a mark deeper than you realize. The board has approved a complete restructuring of our reporting systems for misconduct. Anonymous, third-party managed. Even I won't be able to see who reports what until it's properly investigated." "That's unexpected," I admitted. "You've made enemies, Melina. Powerful ones. But you've made some admirers, too." He straightened. "Your consulting firm, what's it called?" "Vega Partners." He nodded. "Expect a call from our HR department in about a month. We'll be looking for outside expertise on implementing the new systems." With that, he walked away. I stood there, cardboard box in hand, feeling something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not just satisfaction from taking down someone who deserved it, but actual hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. 2 years later, Vega Partners has 27 employees and clients across 3 continents. We help companies identify and address toxic leadership before it becomes entrenched. We train executives on creating genuinely inclusive cultures. We design accountability systems that don't rely on individual courage to function. And Damon, last I heard, was trying to start a leadership coaching business out of his home. It's not going well. Google his name, and the first 3 pages of results are all about his misconduct and termination. Digital karma is forever. As for me, I sleep better now. The nightmares about those 2 hours and 14 minutes of public humiliation have mostly faded. I still flinch occasionally when executives raise their voices in meetings, but I'm working on it. The company, ironically, became a client 6 months ago. Gerald retired last year, and the new CEO is serious about cultural transformation. Sometimes change has to be forced, but once it begins, it can take on a life of its own. I want to be clear. What I did wasn't personal revenge. It was accountability. It was refusing to let another generation of talented people be destroyed by toxic leadership. It was standing up not just for myself, but for Imani, Thomas, Zara, and everyone who had been hurt by a system designed to protect people like Damon at the expense of people like us. If you're watching this and in a similar situation, document everything. Find allies. Know that you're not crazy for feeling mistreated. Most importantly, understand that systems can change, but rarely from within. Sometimes you have to walk away to make the biggest impact. If my story resonated, hit the like button. Share it with someone struggling in a toxic workplace, someone being gaslighted by a powerful boss. Subscribe to hear more stories about workplace transformation and accountability. Leave a comment about your own experiences. Let others know they're not alone. That's how change happens. One story, one witness, one courageous act at a time. I stood alone in that conference room for 2 hours and 14 minutes, but I'm not standing alone anymore, and neither are you.